Alright, here we go with our fourth type of macromolecule or carbon-based molecule. We're looking at nucleic acids. As all the other three, nucleic acids have a monomer, they have dimers, they have polymers. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at the polymers and the monomers, look at the parts, look at the functions, structures, and so forth. So a monomer of a nucleic acid is going to be the nucleotide. So monomers of our nucleic acids are going to be nucleotides. One nucleotide is going to be one monomer. We put a bunch of these nucleotides together, we get this structure. A very complex nucleotide, a polymer of the nucleotide, which is DNA. Look at these pictures. You've got one structure nucleotide, you've got another structure nucleotide, you've got a third structure, and so forth. And all of these nucleotides get hundreds of thousands of nucleotides get built together to form this very long polymer, which is DNA. Now, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And when you look at the structure of DNA, its nucleotide, it's made up of a sugar called deoxyribose, and this is where the deoxy part comes from on the name. Same thing with RNA. RNA is made from a sugar called ribose, so that's where they come up with the ribonucleic acid, or the ribo part of ribonucleic acid, from the names of the sugars. Okay. Here's just a quick picture. We're going to get into these structures in more detail. But a DNA structure is going to form double-stranded structure. The RNA structure is going to form a single-stranded structure, so less complicated. And there's a reason for that. If you look at this structure, and like I said, we're going to get into these in more detail, but once again, you can notice each individual nucleotide structure that forms this complex polymer, this DNA strand. Even though ribonucleic acid is less complicated or less complex, it still is made up of multiple nucleotides, giving it the name of a polymer as well. These are the four types of nucleotides found in DNA and RNA. C, G, A, and T. We're going to get in these in more details later, but this is cysteine, guanine, adenine, and thymine. These are the four types of nucleotides that form in DNA. For RNA, the four types of nucleotides are cysteine, guanine, adenine, and then uracil. It's a little bit different. And like I said, we'll get into those in more detail when we start talking about DNA. But these are the four types of nucleic acids, okay, that go into forming our DNA and RNA polymers. Alright, so what is the function of DNA? DNA is this really large, complex nucleic acid, and its main function is to code for proteins. It's to make proteins. It's this really crazy, weird language of all of these four nucleic acids: cytosine, guanine, thymine, and adenine, and they get mixed up in millions and millions of different patterns. Alright, and these different patterns are going to be codes or languages, and it's going to tell the cells of our body, the cells of an insect, the cells of a plant to code for particular proteins. Now, how do we understand those codes? How does a cell of a plant understand what that code says to make what protein? Well, that's what RNA's job is. RNA's job is to interpret that code that's in DNA, to translate that code, and then it's able to tell the cell of the plant or the animal what particular proteins that DNA code is telling it to make. So it's a translator. It's like a message interpreter. So DNA is the big code, the big information pile, if you will. It holds all the ingredients to tell the cells of a particular organism what proteins it needs. And then the RNA is a very simple job, is to translate that code so it can be understood. Alright, this is the process on how it works. Like I said, we'll get into this in more details later, but in essence, the DNA is made in the nucleus. It's also too big, too complex to come out of the nucleus of the cell, so that's RNA can do that. RNA is going to carry that message out of the cell, out of the nucleus into the cell. Then it's going to go to something called a ribosome. We'll get to this later. Then that's where the understanding part of what type of protein to make occurs. The ribosome reads that instructions and then builds that particular protein, that polypeptide. Alright, so let's get into the monomer of a nucleic acid, this nucleotide. This nucleotide, which is the monomer, is made up of 3 parts: a sugar, a phosphate group, and look at the formula for phosphate. Phosphate, for the chemistry side of it, is made up of 1 phosphorus and 4 oxygens, so this is a phosphate. So a nucleotide is made up of a 5-carbon sugar, which pretty much just means there are 5 carbon molecules that make up that sugar. Another word for a 5-carbon sugar is a pentose sugar. Pentose, or the penta part being 5, and then the ose part being sugar. So pentose sugar is another word for a 5-carbon sugar. Ribose is a pentose sugar. Deoxyribose is also a pentose sugar, a 5-carbon sugar. So the nucleotide is made up of this sugar, made up of a phosphate, and made up of a base that contains nitrogen. Adenine, cytosine, guanine, thymine are the 4 types of bases that contain nitrogen. Those go in to form your DNA. Then, as I mentioned before, adenine, uracil, guanine, and cytosine are the bases that contain nitrogen that make RNA. We'll get into more details later about how all those things function. But those are the types of bases. These are the 3 parts of the nucleotide, and then in essence that's what makes the 4 nucleotides that go into building these structures. So here's a picture. Alright, if you look at this picture, here's the phosphate part of the nucleotide. Here's the sugar. Pentose means a 5-carbon sugar. This could be deoxyribose. This could be ribose. So that's the sugar. And then here's the nitrogen-containing base. Here's another structure, the way it looks. Here's the key. If you see a phosphorus, okay, take this, memorize it. Good hint. If you see a phosphorus in a structure for one of these macromolecules, that's going to mean that you're looking at a nucleotide, which is a monomer for your nucleic acid. So phosphorus means nucleotide or nucleic acid. If you see just nitrogen, nitrogen means amino acid. Okay. If you see this pyramid or a hexagon type structure, that's your sugar. Nitrogen for amino acid, phosphorus for nucleotide. And then these are the major elements that form nucleotides: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Remember, carbon is the basic backbone of all these macromolecules. That's why they're called carbon molecules or carbon-based molecules. Hydrogen's always going to be there. Oxygen's always going to be there. For the nucleic acids, you'll get nitrogen, but you'll have that phosphorus. You'll have that P. So that's a good indicator of that structure. So here one more time, looking at these structures, you've got your nucleotide, monomer, here's another one, and another one, and another one, so forth, all the way down until it builds this large polymer, which is DNA.